King Charles III. In the French Senate, he enjoyed a state banquet in Versailles last night, part of this delayed state visit to France after it was postponed earlier in the summer due to some protests happening in France at the time, not related specifically, at least, to his impending visit, which has thus far seemingly been rather broadly welcomed by the people of France, or at least the ones in and around where he's been. You can see James Cleverly there, the Foreign Secretary, standing just behind him as he takes his seat in the French Senate. He will be the first British monarch to address the French Senate. He's expected to address the Senate in both French and English. You'll be pleased to know we have a live French translator standing by for that. And a very warm welcome of applause there from the French Senate, the upper house in France. And I think we're just awaiting for him to be introduced and brought in. Of course, a similar picture, perhaps with a little bit more, as is typical in France, splendour about it, to when King Charles addressed the Bundestag, of course, earlier this year, to very rave reviews as well, where he also then spoke in the native tongue. Rather impressively. We'll be all able to judge his French shortly. He spoke briefly in French last night at his state banquet. Let's listen in now.
Mesdames et messieurs les ministres,
Mr. President, Madam President, Senators
les députés,
and Lady Senators, Deputies and
pour que la
Lady
présidente
Deputies.
de l'Assemblée nationale prenne la parole dans l'hémicycle du Sénat, il faut un grand événement.
This
Et c'est en effet
requires
un
an
moment
important event,
historique
and
que
it
nous
is indeed a
vivons.
historical
Un grand honneur que vous
moment
nous faites,
that we are
Votre
living,
Majesté,
and
qui connaît bien
this
la
is a great
France,
honour.
mais qui
Your
vient
Majesty,
pour la première fois en tant que
who knows
souverain
France very
du
well,
Royaume-Uni
but
de
who comes for
Grande-Bretagne
the first
et
time
d'Irlande
as
du
the
Nord.
sovereign of the United Kingdom and Northern
Cette
Ireland
visite se devait de comporter
This
une dimension
visit
parlementaire.
is due to have a parliamentary aspect, because one must acknowledge that if
Sur l'idée du
the United
Parlement,
Kingdom
toutes les
required
démocraties du monde
royalties
lui
from
seraient
Parliament,
redevables.
all the parliaments of the world
Dès le siècle des Lumières, le partage
would be involved.
du pouvoir
Since
entre exécutif
Enlightenment,
et législatif fait
France has shared
l'admiration des esprits éclairés.
on a legislative basis.
Théorise la
Montesquieu
séparation des pouvoirs,
theorized
on observe la
on the
pratique
separation of
de
powers
l'autre côté de la Manche. Et c'est aussi à
and
Londres
talked about
Voltaire
the practice on the other side of the channel, and it was Voltaire
Mirabeau
and his
quant à lui,
followers,
plusieurs fois
Mirabeau
victime de
himself,
l'arbitraire
several
royal,
times a victim
vénère tout
of royal
particulièrement l'habeas
arbitration,
corpus britannique.
supported
Et c'est donc sous le titre d'observation d'un
Great
voyageur
Britain,
anglais
and it
qu'il
was
publie sa critique
in
des prisons
his
d'État
journey
françaises.
and his
Dans ce livre, il crédite
texts
nos voisins
on England, and he gives credit to
d'un
his
plus grand
neighbours
respect des droits de l'homme que cette nation
for
si
their full
glorieusement
respect of the rights of
allusion
man,
évidente à la
and
glorieuse révolution
referring
de
to the
1688.
glorious
Lui-même
revolution of
publie son pamphlet un
1688.
siècle plus tard,
He
en
published
1788.
his own
Et si l'année suivante,
pamphlet,
volonté,
and
le
it
même
was the
Mirabeau
will
défie le roi du France en lui opposant la
Mira-
volonté du
Mirabeau
peuple incarnée par la première Assemblée
expressed
nationale.
the desire
C'est tout
of the
simplement
people
qu'il
of the
veut
first
acclimater en France
National
le
Assembly
modèle britannique de
in order
monarchie
to
constitutionnelle.
adopt the British
Finalement,
model
ce sont
of
presque les
constitutional
Anglais qui
monarchy.
firent
It is
la Révolution
almost
française.
the English,
La famille
who
régnante n'était pas
lived
d'accord et la France s'est
the
fondée
French
dans un autre
Revolution.
système, la République,
the French
née le 21
monarchy
septembre, il
did
y a
not support it.
231 ans, jour pour jour.
231 years ago,
Ainsi
the
ont
people
toujours vécu nos deux peuples,
chose a republic.
s'observant,
Thus,
s'influençant,
both our people
longtemps
have
en rivaux,
influenced each other,
mais depuis plus
rivals
d'un
for a
siècle,
long time,
toujours
for more than a century,
pour défendre
always
la
as
démocratie.
allies
et
to
les droits
defend
de l'homme.
democracy and the rights of
Le
man.
calendrier mémoriel est là pour nous le rappeler.
The memorial
L'année
calendar is there
prochaine, en
to remind
2024,
us next year,
nous
in
célébrerons tout à la
2024,
fois
we will celebrate
120 ans
at
de
the same
l'entente
time
cordiale et le
120
80e
years of the Entente
débarquement.
Cordiale
Nous
and the
nous
80th
donc,
anniversary
comme le chantait Véraline, pour
of
continuer
the
de
lib-
sceller ce pacte d'amitié
of the Normandy
et ce long
landings.
partenariat qui nous unit.
We
et
celebrate
qui
this
est
long
essentiel.
partnership that we have lived through.
Aujourd'hui,
Today,
la guerre est revenue sur le sol européen.
war has returned on
Dès lors
European
que les
soil,
valeurs les plus fondamentales
and
se trouvent
when the
menacées
most basic
par un usage
values are
illégal
threatened
et
through
illégitime de la
an
France,
illegal
nos
and
deux pays se
illegitimate
retrouvent
use of force,
une
both
fois
our
de plus
countries
du même
are
côté,
once again
celui du droit
on the same
international
side,
et du respect
on the side
des
of
droits de l'homme.
international law
Deux
and
membres permanents du
respect
Conseil de
of human
sécurité des
rights,
Nations Unies,
permanent
deux
members
membres
of the
de
UN
l'OTAN,
Security
deux
Council,
démocraties
both members
d'influence
of NATO,
capables de
two
s'entendre.
democracies
Cela
of
compte dans un
influence.
monde en proie
It
aux
counts
tentatives
in
de
a world
déstabilisation et de désinformation.
of disinformation and
Enfin, en
destabilization.
tant que femme,
Finally, as a
première
woman,
présidente d'une assemblée
first
parlementaire
president
française,
of a
je
French
voudrais
national
saluer la mémoire de
parliament,
ces
I would
femmes
like to welcome the memories of these
plutôt qu'en
women
France,
who,
ont su faire
more
évoluer les
than in
mentalités
France, were
pour que soient
able
reconnus
to
les
help
mêmes
develop
droits aux deux
the
moitiés du genre humain.
mentality so that
J'aurais donc une
both
pensée
sexes have the
pour ces
same rights.
suffragettes anglaises
I
qui
would like
obtinrent gain
to
de
pay
cause
tribute
dès
to the
1918.
English
Et je veux croire que
suffragettes
c'est en
in
observant les femmes britanniques,
1918 and
leur
in
engagement,
observing
leur
English
civisme
women, their
dans les épreuves
commitment,
de la guerre et du Blitz,
their public
que le général de
spiritedness
Gaulle
during the
signa l'ordonnance du
Blitz
21
when General de
21
Gaulle
avril 1944,
signed
qui rendit
the
enfin
order on the
les
21st of April
Françaises
1944,
électrices
which
et
finally
éligibles. À
allowed
Londres
French
aussi,
people to
pendant
be
la guerre,
free.
un jeune
In
Français qui
London
avait
too,
rejoint la
during
France libre
the war, a young
découvrit qu'on pouvait
Frenchman who
acheter
joined
en
Free
pharmacie des
France
produits
discovered that we
anticonceptionnels
could buy,
permettant aux femmes de contrôler leur natalité. Il s'appelait
allowing
Lucien
women to
Neuvier,
control
futur
through
député et
contraception,
futur
a future
sénateur,
deputy
qui
and a future
obtiendra en
senator who
1967 la
obtained
légalisation
in
de la pilule en France.
1967 the
Au moment où
legalization
dans
of
le
the pill
monde
in
et
France
jusque
at a
dans
time
de
when
grandes
in the world
démocraties, les droits des femmes
and
sont remis en
for
question
great
sur la base d'un discours
democracies, the
nataliste
rights of
agressif.
women
Il est bon de rappeler
on the
cet
basis
épisode qui est beaucoup
it's
plus
important to recall
qu'une
this period
anecdote.
that is
La
not just
liberté
an
ne se
anecdote.
segmente
The
pas.
freedom
On est libre
is
ou on
not
ne l'est pas.
fragmented. We are free
Et nous
or we
voulons
are not
l'être
free.
dans toutes les
We wish
dimensions
to
de la
be
vie.
in all
Sire,
aspects of life.
nos deux démocraties continueront d'avancer
Both our
ainsi
democracies
vers notre
will
idéal commun de
continue
liberté et de
to live
respect
through the
de la
common
personne
ideal
humaine.
of freedom and
Chacune à
respect
son
of
pas,
human life,
chacune à sa manière,
each
mais
in its
toujours
own way,
main dans la
but
main
always
quand il faut
hand
être ferme.
in glove, hand
Ainsi, je
in
sais
hand.
qu'ensemble
When
nous avancerons,
one
nous
needs to be
ferons
firm, we
avancer le
know that
monde
together we
sur
will
la
make the
préservation
world
de l'environnement
progress
et de la
on
biodiversité,
the
cause pour
improvement of
lesquelles
the
nous savons
environment
votre
and
investissement
biodiversity.
personnel depuis votre
And we
jeunesse.
know it
Sur cet
is
enjeu
our
majeur,
investment from
sur
youth,
cette grande question du
time of
millénaire,
youth, with this big
Marianne et
question
Britannia
of the
resteront
millennium.
deux sœurs.
Marianne
Comme le déclara
and
Winston Churchill à la
Britain,
Chambre
as
des
Winston
communes,
Churchill said at the
le
House of
Tout-Puissant, dans
Commons,
son infinie sagesse, n'a pas jugé
in
bon de
his
créer les Français
wisdom,
à l'image des Anglais.
did not want
Et il
French
disait
people
aussi,
to be the
la
same as
France et
English
la
people. He said
Grande-Bretagne
also
ont
that
trouvé le
France and
chemin
Great
de la
Britain
liberté par des voies
have
bien
followed
différentes,
the path of
mais tant
freedom,
qu'elles feront cause commune,
but
il
as
sera
long
bien dangereux de
as they
les
have a
provoquer
common
et bien
cause,
difficile
it will
de
be
les abattre.
difficult
Sire, il est impossible en quelques minutes de résumer des
to
siècles de
destroy them.
voisinage et de
It's
partenariats
difficult
multiples.
to sum up in
Mais je
just a
sais
few minutes
que
a
nous nous
partnership.
comprenons pour
But I
continuer
know
de
that
faire
we
ainsi
understand
cause commune.
each other
Nos
and
deux
that
pays
we
qui
will
se sont mis
continue
d'accord pour
to follow
restaurer
a
et
common
entretenir
path.
la
Both
tapisserie du
countries
Bayeux sauront donner
that
une suite
agree to
enthousiasmante
restore
à cette
the
première
Bayeux
bande dessinée de
tapestry
l'histoire.
for
C'est
this
tout le sens de
first
votre visite. Et c'est pourquoi
example,
je
and
suis fière
it's the reason for
et
your
heureuse
visit, and that's
de vous
why
dire,
I'm happy,
au
I'm
nom de
proud,
la représentation nationale,
in the
bienvenue
name
en
of national
France.
representation, welcome you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Madame la Présidente de l'Assemblée nationale,
Madam President of the National Assembly, Mr. Secretary General of the Commonwealth and Development, ladies and gentlemen, ambassadors, and dear parliamentary colleagues.
C'est un moment inédit
It
que
is
nous fait vivre
an
Votre
exceptional
Majesté
moment
en nous
that
faisant l'honneur de
Your Majesty
s'adresser dans cet hémicycle du Sénat
pays to us
à la représentation parlementaire
being
française.
president
Pour la première
at
fois
a time of
dans l'histoire
national
multiséculaire de
parliament
notre
in
pays,
the first
un souverain
multi-secular,
britannique va prendre la parole
for the first time,
devant le
a British
Parlement
sovereign
français,
will speak
réuni
before
dans
the
sa
French
composition
Parliament,
bicamérale
united
et dans
in
sa
its
diversité politique.
diverse political
Vous
diversity
me permettrez de
and
souhaiter la
dual
bienvenue
chambers.
à la
I
présidente de
welcome,
l'Assemblée nationale et à
welcome,
vous tous, chers
I
collègues
welcome the
députés,
President of the
qui
National
siégez aujourd'hui
Assembly, colleagues,
parmi vos collègues sénateurs.
and
J'ai le plaisir
those
également
sitting
de saluer les
amongst
membres
your
de la Chambre des communes
senators. I
et de la
welcome
Chambre des Lords
the members of the
qui se sont
Chamber
joints
of
à
Commons,
nous
the
ce
House of
matin.
Commons and the House of Lords that are joining us this morning. Thank you.
Vous avez tenu cire à réserver au Parlement français
Your
le
Majesty,
discours
you
public
have
que vous
wished
prononcerez
to speak
dans votre visite.
publicly in what
dire
you
l'estime
are doing in your public
entre
visit,
la
your
plus ancienne
esteem
des nations parlementaires
between the oldest parliamentary
et le
nation, the United
parlementarisme
Kingdom,
français.
and French,
De l'habeas
the
corpus à
French
la Chambre des
Parliament.
droits,
The habeas
le Royaume-Uni a ouvert la
corpus
voie
has
au
opened
parlementarisme moderne.
path
Il faut avoir assisté
for
comme
a
Chateaubriand
modern parliament. Like
aux séances du
Chateaubriand,
Parlement britannique
one
pour
needed to
s'exclamer
be president
dans les mémoires d'outre-tombe, je le cite,
in
la
the
liberté
memoir of
contenue dans
Outre-Tombe.
les limites de
The
l'ordre
freedom
semblait
contained
se débattre à Westminster.
seems to be
Fin de citation.
take place
Chateaubriand.
in Westminster.
démocratie
End
parlementaire,
of Chateaubriand's quote.
Et j'en suis persuadé,
Quote,
le plus sûr
Parliamentary
antidote
democracy
pour
is the
juguler les
purest
passions politiques.
antidote to deal
Et entre nos deux pays,
with
c'est bien de
political
passion
discussions.
dont
And
il s'agit.
for both our countries,
Parfois
we are
ennemis,
talking about passion,
Souvent alliés,
sometimes united, often
longtemps
allies,
concurrents, le Royaume-Uni et la France
competitors
sont
for a long
destinés
time.
alliés.
The United Kingdom and France
Dans les heures sombres, le Royaume-Uni fut un
have been
refuge pour
allies
tous
in
les
the
Français
darkest
contraints à
moments.
l'exil.
The United Kingdom,
même un
Great
temps
Britain, was
En
a
juin
country of
1940,
refuge.
où la capitale de la
There was
France
a time
s'était en
in
quelque
1940
sorte
when the
transportée
capital
à
of
Londres
France
pour
was
édifier ensemble
moved to London
commune
to edify,
au
to
totalitarisme
have
et à l'empire
to
de la
face
brutalité. Quand l'adversité se
totalitarianism.
réalisait
In
après une année
adversity,
tumulte, la vision prophétique
of
de Victor Hugo,
the
qui a
prophetic
siégé ici, sur ces bancs,
comment of
l'Angleterre
Victor Hugo,
toujours sera
the
sœur
United
de la
England
France, écrivait
is
Victor Hugo.
always a sister of France.
Aujourd'hui, alors
As
que nous nous
Victor
apprêtons à
Hugo
commémorer
said, today,
au printemps
as we
prochain
are
le 80e
commemorating
anniversaire
next spring the 80th
débarquement
anniversary
en
of the
Normandie,
D-Day landings in
le
Normandy,
destin du Royaume-Uni demeure intimement
the
lié
destiny of the
au
United
continent
Kingdom
européen.
is
Le Brexit
very, very
c'est-à-dire,
closely linked
n'y a rien
to
changé.
Europe.
Votre nation
Brexit has not
est un
changed
acteur
anything. Your nation
primordial de la
is a
sécurité en
vital
Europe. Le
player
Royaume-Uni et la France,
for European security. The United Kingdom and France,
dont
both
l'une, la vôtre,
countries with military
n'a jamais été
traditions.
envahie,
Yours,
sauf par Guillaume le
that has
Conquérant,
never been
français avant l'heure.
invaded since
Oui, le Royaume-Uni et la France
when
se
Guillaume
sont
le
à de
Conquérant,
multiples
United
reprises
Kingdom and France,
éprouvés
on several
et
occasions,
toujours respectés.
have
Depuis l'entente cordiale,
always
il y
respected
aura bientôt
each other.
120
Since the
ans,
Entente
elles sont
Cordiale,
toujours
almost
côte à côte.
120 years ago,
Elles sont
they
toujours
are
des fidèles à leur
side by
vocation,
side,
en se portant
they're
au secours de l'Ukraine,
loyal
agressée
in
et
supporting
meurtrie.
Ukraine.
Vous avez choisi,
that has
Sire,
been
comme la reine
aggressed.
Elisabeth
Your
II,
Majesty,
lors de
you
sa
have
visite
chosen,
d'État en
like
2004, de
Elizabeth,
vous rendre au Sénat.
Queen Elizabeth
Au-delà du
II,
respect porté à la
to
reine,
be present
dont je tiens à
at
saluer
the
la
Senate.
mémoire, nous voulons y
And
percevoir un hommage au
We want
territoire
to pay
de la
homage
République,
to
que les
the
souverains
territory
britanniques ont si
of the Republic
ardument parcouru
and
et que le Sénat
British
représente.
citizens
Un hommage à cette diversité
represented by
de
the
territoires et de
Senate.
paysages
This homage
dont la préservation
various-
vous tient
for the
si
preservation,
tellement à cœur
preservation
et qui
which is so
constitue
close to your
l'une des grandes
heart
causes de notre
and
temps.
constitutes
Les
one of the
collectivités
great causes of
territoriales
our
de nos pays,
times,
à
territorial
travers notamment des communes,
communities
ont noué tant de relations entre elles.
have had so many close relations,
Le plus solide
and they are
de notre
the most solid basis
à travers
of
les
our friendship.
territoires,
Through the
se forge le
territories,
génie d'une nation. Cette
we
idée
see
n'est pas
the
mienne.
genius of a nation.
Elle
It's not my
provient du
idea.
plus français
It comes
des
from
historiens britanniques,
the most
Théodore Zeldin,
French
dans l'histoire des passions
of
françaises.
English historians,
Et
Theodore
concédons-le.
Zeldin.
Oui, concédons-le à notre fierté nationale. Il faut bien un historien
Our
britannique de grand
national
talent
pride, we
pour
need a
réussir à
great
décrypter les
historian
méandres
to
des passions
unravel
françaises.
the
Sire,
expressions of French
sire,
passion. Your Majesty,
rares sont les pays européens qui, comme le
rare
Royaume-Uni
are
et la
European
France,
countries like the United
préservé une
Kingdom and
même
France
aspiration
have
à considérer le monde dans
had
sa
the same
globalité.
aspiration to
Et tisser
consider
autant de liens de solidarité
globalization and to have links of solidarity
avec un
with the
constat
most
partagé.
vulnerable countries.
L'exacerbation des fractures nord-sud ne sert que
The
les ambitions
increasing
de
division
puissance
between
des
North and
gouvernants
South
qui les attisent. Le néocolonialisme est le fait d'États prédateurs et non
neocolonialism.
des colonisateurs d'hier. La France et le
France
Royaume-Uni
and the United
disposent des
Kingdom
ressorts nécessaires pour proposer
have the necessary
un autre
resources to
des
propose
coopérations
a
équilibrées,
new world,
la sécurité,
balanced
le
cooperation,
développement qui soit
security,
durable et une
development
attention
that is
particulière
long-lasting,
à la
and
jeunesse
particular
de ces
attention
pays.
for the youth
Le moment
of their
me
countries.
semble venu de
The
rassembler les
time
grandes familles du
seems to me to
Commonwealth
have come
et de
to
la
gather the
francophonie
great
pour
families
qu'elles forgent une
of
ambition
the French-speaking
et
world
un
and the
langage
Commonwealth, that they have an
commun.
ambition and a
Ce que
language, a common
préfigurait avec
language,
humour le général de Gaulle,
what General de
se
Gaulle
confiait à
had
Winston
foreseen,
Churchill, et je le cite,
who confided in Winston
plus
Churchill,
vous
and I
progressiez
quote
en
him,
français
more we
et plus vous
progress
comprenez mon anglais.
as
Cette formule me va assez bien aussi pour mon anglais.
French, and this is really quite an appropriate quote.
Sire,
Your
Sa
Majesty,
Majesté la Reine Élisabeth avait
Her
déclaré
Majesty
en
Queen Elizabeth
1996,
had declared
lors d'une autre visite d'État,
in 1996,
celle du
during
président
another
Jacques
official
Chirac à
state
Londres,
visit,
et je la
that
cite,
of Jacques Chirac
s'il est
in
vrai que
London,
nous
and
ne
I quote
conduisons
her,
pas du même côté de
it
la
is,
route,
it is true that we
il
don't
est
drive
tout
on the
aussi
same side
vrai
of the road,
que nous
but it's also
avançons dans
true
la même
that
direction.
we are
Ce
moving
trait
forward in the
d'esprit
same direction.
qui nous paraît à nous, Français,
This
si
comment
typiquement
that seems
britannique,
to us
so British,
is such a
nous distinguons une vérité
British
essentielle.
comment
Nos chemins
describes
peuvent
an
être
absolute
différents.
truth. Our
Ils
paths may be
divergent même
different,
parfois,
and
mais par une
sometimes
constante qui défie les règles de
they
la logique
diverge
et de la
and defy
géographie.
logic
De Londres,
and geography.
il nous ramène toujours à Paris et de
From
Paris
London, we
à
always go
Londres.
back to Paris, and
Ainsi
we go
s'incline
from Paris back to
le
London.
cartésianisme français devant
That is
l'humour et
French
l'esprit britannique.
Cartesian
Sire, maintenant,
approach
à travers les parlementaires
for England.
unis,
Your Majesty,
c'est la nation
through the
française tout
United
entière qui
Parliamentarians
vous écoute.
and the whole
Merci.
French nation is listening to you. Thank you very much.
Monsieur le Président, Madame
Mr.
la
President,
Présidente, Mesdames
Madam
les sénatrices et Messieurs les sénateurs, Mesdames et
Senators and
Messieurs
lady
les
senators,
députés,
deputies and lady
merci
deputies,
mille fois pour
thank you
votre mot très émouvant.
many much
Je
for your
suis
moving
flatté
words.
d'avoir
I'm
été
flattered
invité
to have
par
been
les présidents
invited
de vos deux chambres à
by
parler
the
ici,
presidents
dans
of
cette
in
illustre
Paris of
enceinte
both
qui a
houses
été
to speak
d'une
here in
manière
this hallowed
ou d'une autre
chamber,
la chambre haute du
which
Parlement
has been the
français
upper
depuis
house of French politics in one form
1799.
or another since
Je suis bien conscient
1799.
que ma
I'm all
visite
too
précède
conscious
la rentrée
that
officielle
my visit falls ahead of the formal rentrée of both chambers of your parliament, and I can only apologize for having intruded on your break.
C'est la raison pour laquelle je suis très touché par votre
And the reason why I'm particularly touched by your presence here today,
La longévité de votre démocratie est reflétée
the long
aussi
continuity of your
dans
democracy,
la longue amitié
embodied
qui lie
by
nos
this
nations
august legislature,
et
is
nos
reflected
peuples.
too in the enduring
Notre
friendship
partenariat
between our nations and our
construit
people.
sur une expérience
Ours
partagée
is a
demeure
partnership
absolument
forged
vitale
through shared
alors
experience,
qu'ensemble nous confrontons les défis
and
de ce
one
monde.
which remains utterly vital as together we
simplement,
confront the
le
challenges
Royaume-Uni
of our world.
sera
Quite simply,
toujours un
the
des
United
alliés les
Kingdom
plus
will
proches
always
et un
be
des
one of
meilleurs
France's
amis de la France.
closest allies and best friends.
Hier, mon épouse et moi-même avons commencé
Yesterday, my
cette
wife
visite
and I
à la tombe
began
du soldat
our
inconnu.
visit at the tomb of the
Là,
unknown
nous avons
soldier.
commémoré tous
There,
ceux qui
we
sont
remembered
tombés
all
pour
those who
défendre
have
les
fallen
libertés si chères
in
à nos
defense
deux
of the
pays.
freedoms that our two countries
Au cœur
hold
de
dear.
cette grande nation, nous avons
At the very
rendu
heart
un
of this
hommage
great nation,
silencieux
we
et
stood with
solidaire
you
debout,
in quiet
côte à côte
solidarity,
avec vous,
just
comme
as our
nos
people
pays se sont
have stood
tenus
together
côte à côte
so
si
many
souvent
times
dans
before.
l'histoire. I was reminded that it was there, at the Arc de Triomphe, 16 months ago, that with characteristic generosity of spirit, you marked the Platinum Jubilee of my beloved mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II. On that occasion, President Macron described Her late Majesty as the golden thread that binds our nations. Quand ma mère est décédée l'année dernière,
When my mother died almost exactly 1 year ago, my family and I were moved beyond measure by the tributes that were paid to her across France. This morning, I read again the deeply touching words of condolence that Your Excellencies, Presidents of the National Assembly and the Senate, wrote at that time. You described Her late Majesty as having embodied the dignity of our own democracy, and that as she loved France, France loved her. I can hardly describe how much these words meant to me, to my entire family. I can only thank you and the people of France for the great kindness you showed to us and our people at a time of such grief. In the rich and complex tapestry of the relationship between France and the United Kingdom, my mother's golden thread will forever shine brightly. Let it inspire us all to continue to weave the connections between our two countries with determination, hope, and with love.
Inspired and encouraged by my grandmother's and my late mother's example, France has been an essential part of the fabric of my own life for as long as I can remember. Indeed, as I have been astonished to discover, this is my 35th official visit to France. Each and every time, I have been struck by the warmth of the welcome I have always received, and by the immense good that can be accomplished when France and the United Kingdom work together. Now, on the occasion of my first state visit to France, my belief in the indispensable relationship between our countries is as firm as it ever has been. Today, in confronting the greatest challenges of our time, we continue the work of those who came before us. When General de Gaulle spoke to the French people from London in June of 1940, he said, "Remember this, France does not stand alone. She is not isolated. She can make common cause with the British." De Gaulle's confidence in our alliance was well-founded. 2 days before the Appel du 18 juin, Sir Winston Churchill's government had offered France an indissoluble political union, which would have allowed our two peoples to continue the fight for justice and freedom as a single country. Just 2 months after that historic broadcast, my grandfather, King George VI, proudly wearing the crimson ribbon of the Légion d'honneur, joined de Gaulle at Morville Camp near Aldershot to inspect 2,500 of the Free French troops. The common determination expressed that day sustained us through the long and bitter years of that war and drove us forward together to victory. Cette éclatante illustration de notre engagement envers la liberté franco-britannique se déploie en...
And democracy remains intensely relevant to this day. At this present time, our armed forces train together in the combined joint expeditionary force, deployed together with UN peacekeeping forces, and through the UN Security Council, the G7 and NATO assume together a joint responsibility for European and global security. Now, more than 80 years since we fought side by side for the liberation of Europe, we once again face unprovoked aggression on our continent. Our alliance and our resolve are as important as ever. Together, we stand in resolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people.
Dans notre détermination que l'Ukraine triomphera et que nos libertés si chères
Together, we are steadfast in our determination Ukraine will triumph and that our cherished freedoms will prevail.
Of so much that we hold dear. Just as we stand together against military aggression, so must we strive together to protect the world from our most existential challenge of all, that of global warming, climate change, and the catastrophic destruction of nature. Jacques-Yves Cousteau a dit si sagement,
Jacques-Yves Cousteau said so wisely, for most of history, man has had to fight nature.
Il commence à comprendre que pour se vivre, il doit la protéger. Cette vision est encore plus pertinente en ce 21e siècle.
More relevant in the 21st century,
du défi auquel notre planète est confrontée.
In spite of the challenges our continent is facing, it is urgent to see measures
Je pense depuis longtemps que nos entreprises peuvent jouer un rôle essentiel.
I have long felt that our businesses can play a most vital role working in partnership and harmony with our governments and invest millions to develop solutions that can achieve success. With President Macron, that I will meet this afternoon, business leaders from France and Britain whose collaboration innovations and investments in clean growth and in preserving our precious biodiversity are offering essential global leadership. And I have been reflecting on the opportunities that members of the Commonwealth and the International Organization Organisation de Francophonie share. I hope they will very much that they might be avenues for future collaboration, for example, to find a way to strengthen cooperation around sustainable development.
Our two governments are working in partnership to address so many global challenges, and yet, as ever, it is our people who are the true driving force of our relationship. Our friendship and warm familiarity are fortified by each new connection between us. It is renewed by each newfound joy in the culture of the other, and each reminder of how much we share. Millions of us visit each other's countries every year, a joy that we are now rediscovering after the disruption wrought by the pandemic. Tens of thousands of British rugby fans are currently following their national team around France, enjoying the fantastic spectacle of the Rugby World Cup. My son and daughter-in-law among them. Even when our national teams are drawn up on opposite ends of the pitch, they do so with mutual admiration and a shared commitment to the rules of the game, on which I will say only pas de coup bas et que le meilleur gagne. And of course, hundreds of thousands of our fellow citizens have chosen to live their lives permanently in each other's countries. This vibrant exchange between our people makes us immeasurably stronger, happier, and more prosperous. Nos artistes continuent de s'inspirer les uns des autres.
Our artists continue to draw inspiration from one another, as they always have, blending old and new and creating work that is fresh, complex, and enriching. From Claude Monet's unforgettable pictures of London and of the fog in London, which so fascinated French visitors, to David Hockney's most recent iPad depictions of the changing landscapes of Normandy, or the invigorating collaboration between British designer Paul Smith and the Picasso Museum in Paris. There is a universality in our shared artistic traditions. Indeed, right now, my darling wife is celebrating this artistic collaboration by launching the inaugural UK-France Literary Prize, recognising exceptional contemporary fiction published in French and English at the extraordinary Bibliothèque Nationale de France.
Tomorrow, my wife and I will visit Bordeaux, the first city to be twinned with a British city, Bristol, in 1947. This shared link is just one of a countless number of connections between our towns and cities, our communities, our businesses, and our educational establishments. It is our people, through all that they do together, who are writing each new chapter of our history, so that a more secure, more prosperous world might be the inheritance of the next generation. Our young people must, therefore, be at the heart of our shared endeavors. Ce matin, je me réjouis donc de rejoindre des jeunes.
So this morning, I look forward to joining young people in the 19th arrondissement of Paris and in Saint-Denis who are being supported into work through community initiatives By supporting our young people, we invest in our future, an investment that will be repaid countless times over. Mr. President, Madam President, Senators and Lady Senators, Deputies and Lady Deputies, nearly 120 years ago, my great-great-grandfather, King Edward VII, committed himself on behalf of the United Kingdom to the Entente Cordiale and to the bond between our two countries. That bond was sanctified by the immeasurable sacrifices of the last century and burnished by each instance of our shared enterprise. Today, it is in our hands, having passed with pride from father to daughter, mother to son, just as it has been handed through the generations of my own family. For the time that is granted to me as king, I pledge to do whatever I can to strengthen the indispensable relationship between the United Kingdom and France. And today, I invite you to join me in this endeavor. Together, our potential is limitless. Let us therefore cherish and nurture our Entente Cordiale. Let us renew it for future generations, so that I would like to propose it also becomes an entente pour la durabilité, for sustainability, in order to tackle the global climate and biodiversity emergency more effectively. Commitment to each other and to the values we so proudly share, a commitment inspired by the example of the past and emboldened to grapple with the immense challenges in the world around us. As neighbours, friends, partners, and allies, there is no challenge to which we cannot rise, as we have done so often in the past. Let us stride forward with hope and courage, and let us do so together. Thank you very much.
Sire, des applaudissements qui nous feraient rêver, Madame la Présidente et moi-même.
The applause that we have seen. We do not despair, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen, parliamentarians, I ask you to remain seated until the National Assembly and accompany His Majesty to thank him for his presence this morning
Merci, Sire.
Thank you, Your Majesty.
King Charles III there, the first British monarch to address the French Senate and receiving almost a full minute of a very warm set of applause and a standing ovation as he wrapped up his speech, which went on for about 15, 20 minutes. As he did wrap it up, he referenced his great-great-grandfather, Edward VII, 120 years earlier, committing himself to the entente cordiale between France and the UK. And King Charles saying, for his time as king, I pledge to do whatever I can to be the indispensable commitment between the two countries. Together, our potential is unlimited. And he said he would treasure and cherish the entente cordiale. In fact, as he was wrapping things up there, he did just bring in the word sustainability again. And that topic did come up during the speech. He talked about the importance of the alliance between the two countries, which in particular he started by saying more than 80 years since we fought side by side for the liberation of Europe. It's an alliance and a resolve that's as important as ever, and we stand in resolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people at the moment. But he went on during that part of the speech to talk too about standing together on global warming and climate change, which he described as the most existential threat of all. He said urgent to see measures taken. And he said specifically, I have long felt our business can play a vital role in partnership with governments. He did say out of the political aisle there, thus perhaps keeping himself out of any hot water. But of course, the timing of making such overt comments like that, comments which he may well have made no matter what, given his passion on the issue, will no doubt be dissected in the hours ahead, given the announcement from the Prime Minister yesterday to relax some of the sub-commitments to the UK reaching net zero by 2050, while maintaining that ultimate commitment to reach net zero by 2050. In fact, as the King was making that speech, the Prime Minister did tweet on that very topic. The final in a long thread of tweets was to say that this is the Prime Minister tweeting during that speech. I care about reaching net zero by 2050, but on the current path, we risk losing the consent of the British people. No one has had the courage to look the people in the eye and explain what's really involved. That's wrong, and it changes with this new approach to meeting net zero. So interesting, different messages there on that topic coming out from the head of government of the United Kingdom and the head of state of the United Kingdom during the course of that speech. If we just go back to some of the other headlines from the beginning of that speech from King Charles III, it started with a joke in French, no easy thing, of course, which was rewarded with wide laughter within the Senate there. He apologised to the attendees for intruding on their break, the French Assembly and the Senate not, in fact, sitting at the moment, but of course returned for this particular speech from the King of England. He spoke often throughout that about the partnership and the shared values of the two countries, and said the UK will always be one of France's closest allies and best friends. He also thanked both the French president, the French parliamentarians and the French people for the moving words from across France when Queen Elizabeth II died. Right, I want to get a little bit of reaction now from our Laura Bundock, royal correspondent, who is in the room there for the speech. And Laura, we've just summarised some of the key takeaways from the content of the speech, which perhaps we'll come to again in a moment. But first and foremost, sum up for us the mood, which on camera looked incredibly warm and supportive from French parliamentarians for the King.
It certainly was, and the King making a reflection within the speech on the warmth of the welcome that he had received, not just on this visit, but on the other 34 official visits he'd made previously in the past. This, of course, his first state visit as monarch now. This very much felt like a set-piece speech, didn't it, setting out the theme, the message of this trip, which is one of rebuilding and restoring relations after Brexit. The King making absolutely no reference to Brexit whatsoever. It was interesting, though, listening to one of the politicians who introduced him. He was the only one who did mention it, who said that Brexit has changed nothing, I think, in respect of the alliance, the relationship, and the common cause that France and the UK shared. So this trip was very much about the King using the soft power of the monarchy to stress the things that the UK and France have in common, rather than the things that have divided them. Because let's be honest, the bumpy ride, the turbulence of Brexit, the difficult kind of fractious relationship with previous prime ministers, I think, have caused issues with that relationship. But the word friendship, I noticed, pops up time and time again. And I think there was an arc to what the King was talking about, obviously thanking his hosts for hosting him, but speaking very fondly of his mother, reflecting on how Emmanuel Macron had described her as the golden thread that unites Britain and France, and saying in his speech there, she is the golden thread that will forever shine brightly, and how the two countries should use that thread to inspire us to weave the connections between us. References too about the war in Ukraine, the alliance and the shared resolve the two countries have to stand in solidarity, supporting Ukraine. That was the theme we heard mentioned in the German parliament too. And then, of course, on to the climate, an issue we know the King cares very deeply about. And, you know, some could say, look, this is the controversial part of the speech in many ways. He knows, and his advisors certainly would be well aware that back in the UK, this has become a big political issue. But here he was speaking very clearly about the environment, his commitment to the climate, talking about the entente cordiale, but a new entente, an entente of sustainability. That was his desire in that. He spoke, I think, comfortably. I mean, most of it was in French, over 18 and a half minutes, with this round of applause that the floor of the Senate rose to its feet for nearly 2 minutes to give a standing ovation at the end. I think the speech went down well. It certainly ticked the boxes when it came to stressing, as I say, the themes of this visit, which is about restoring, renewing, rekindling that relationship between Britain and France.